Hello everybody, it's Zoe here from Living with a Sleeve. Welcome again to my weekly little chat about sleeve gastrectomy and sort of tips and tricks and advice and information to help your journey with weight loss surgery a whole lot easier. If you haven't met me before, my name is Zoe. I'm a dietitian. I work specifically with patients that are undergoing weight loss surgery, and just really my job is to help them make sure that you're getting the nutrition that you need from your food, but also to adjust to the process. So the reason I started Living with a Sleeve is to, I guess, just sort of spread good quality evidence-based information and practical tips that I found across over the years my patients have really sort of found very helpful. So continuing on in the process of, I guess, getting back onto normal food after the surgery, I thought today I would really talk about the Puree Phase. So if you are either considering surgery or you've just had your surgery, you might like to go back and just have a look at some of the other videos I've done. I've already spoken about the Optifast phase, which is before the surgery, and I've spoken about the fluids phase, which happens after the surgery for the first 2 weeks. Bearing in mind that this is what we do in our clinic and each surgeon is different, so the timing around the phases after surgery may be slightly different with your surgeon, but really sort of the texture and the theory behind each of the phases will be similar. Okay, so today I just wanted to talk with you about the Puree phase. So in our clinic, the way we do it is we do Optifast before the surgery, and then after the surgery we do 2 weeks of fluids, and then we do 2 weeks of purees before we finally get you back onto eating normal food again. So today, talking about the Puree phase. So this would be weeks 3 and 4 after surgery with us if you had a sleeve gastrectomy, or even if you had a bypass as well, it would be or a mini bypass, similar process, sort of getting back onto regular food again after the surgery. So the reason that we go through this progression is just to let your stomach heal. So if you think, and I've said this before, I think I've talked about it with the fluid phase, you can think about your stomach before the surgery as being like a big sack. And then after the surgery, you've kind of ended up, after a sleeve, you've ended up with a little pipe. But because of the wound down here, everything is swollen shut. And so what we need to do is just wait for the swelling to go down so that you get a little bit more room in there. It's why we do the fluids first, because if you eat anything more solid in the first 2 weeks, it actually won't go down and it'll put a lot of pressure on the wound. Once the swelling has started to go down, you might find that you start to get a little bit hungry again, and that's a good sign that you're ready to move on to the Puree phase, because the swelling is going down, there's a little bit more room in there, so some thicker foods can actually start to go through. Some doctors really are very specific about only having pureed foods, so only blending foods, sort of eating foods, I guess the consistency of what you would feed a child when they first start eating food. And we do it a little bit differently in our clinic. The way that we sort of think about it, and the golden rule, is that if you can easily squash it with a fork, you can have it. If it won't squash with a fork, you can't have it. So it needs to be squishy, it needs to be mushy, and you'll probably end up fitting about half a cup in. So this little bowl is similar to a ramekin, like a 1 cup ramekin, and so we're only talking, it's very small, it's half a cup there. That half a cup you need to eat really slowly. So that half a cup you still probably need to take 20 to 30 minutes to eat. And the key here is to take very, very small mouthfuls. So half a teaspoon, maybe even a quarter of a teaspoon per mouthful, and resting in between, and still making sure that you chew all your food, making sure that there's nothing sort of lumpy in there or no hard bits in the food that you're eating. A few other little tips and tricks. Definitely no fizzy drinks, no alcohol, and you want to try and stop drinking excess calorie containing drinks like milk or juice unless it's actually a meal. If you're having a glass of milk as a meal or an Optifast as a meal, or maybe a, say, banana smoothie as a meal, that's fine, but you don't want to be sipping on extra calories throughout the day. The other thing is no eating and drinking at the same time. So that's something that you need to get used to when you're living with a sleeve in the long term, and the same thing applies at the moment in the Puree phase as well. So you need to wait generally sort of 15 to 20 minutes before you eat after you've had a drink, and then wait about half an hour after you've eaten before you have a drink again. And that can be a little bit of a bugger because it can mean that it takes about even up to an hour and a half out of your day where you can't drink, because you're waiting 20 minutes before your meal, and then you're taking 20 to 30 minutes for your meal, and then you're waiting about 30 minutes afterwards. It means that 3 times a day you're going to miss out on an hour and a half or so, which takes a huge amount of time out of your day that you would normally be able to drink. So you might find that when you progress onto the Puree phase, you start to get a little bit dehydrated. You find it difficult to get in enough fluids, and that's something that's really common, but it just means that you need to be sipping constantly throughout the day, except for around those meal times. So that is a little bit of a challenge. Also, thinking about meals, like ideally what I sort of encourage my patients to do is to have 3 puree meals, but have a sort of a high protein puree snack in between if you're hungry. Because what I find is that if you get too hungry by the time you get to your next meal, then you're more likely to take a few mouthfuls that are too big, or eat a bit too fast, and then you're more likely to make yourself feel uncomfortable and put pressure on that wound. So we really want just slow and steady wins the race in this bit. We're still waiting for everything to heal. We want to minimize any risk of the food causing a leak. Okay, so I bet you're wondering what we can actually eat, and this is the fun bit. I often find that people are really excited to start eating some different foods after the fluid phase, and for good reason. Most people are well and truly sick of Optifast, and I can understand why. And to be able to have something, you know, a bit more savoury and a bit of different texture is really good. So a few options for you for breakfast. Again, as with any sort of eating with a sleeve after the surgery, you really want to be including protein in each meal. So you'll notice that as I go through, all of these options have protein in them. So breakfast, you might have something like a bowl of cereal, a small bowl, very small bowl of cereal made soggy with milk. And for example, like 1 Weet-Bix seems to be pretty perfect. And as the 2 weeks goes on, you can make it thicker and thicker and thicker, but you want the volume to stay the same. So you might stick with the 1 Weet-Bix, but to start with, you're going to add lots and lots of milk, so it's quite runny and very liquidy, like it's got a lot of milk in it. And then as the 2 weeks goes by, you can slowly start to add a little bit less milk, so it's a little bit more solid, even though it's still squishable. So that's sort of the concept for all of these meal options. You might have porridge made with milk, so you get the protein from the milk, baked beans, an egg, something like a fruit smoothie, or a yogurt or ricotta or cottage cheese, maybe some avocado, maybe like a little bit of banana or pureed fruit or stewed fruit and yogurt, or you can always have an Optifast. The thing with all of those meal ideas is you don't need to blend it all up. So as I mentioned before, as long as it's squashable and then you chew and chew and chew, so by the time you swallow it, it's puree, that's okay. So for example, things like banana, avocado, ricotta, cottage cheese, baked beans, they're all soft enough. As long as you just take your mouthful, chew, 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 swallow, wait, and then take your next mouthful. So it is a bit of a slow process. Lunch and dinner, we're looking for a mix of protein and vegetables. Okay, so if you're having any type of meat or chicken, so like beef, pork, lamb, chicken, Any type of sort of casserole or stew is much easier to eat because it's saucy, but you will still need to blend it, okay? Any type of meat or chicken you will need to blend. It doesn't matter how soft it is, how slow cooked it is still too difficult to chew. And so really, that's a non-negotiable. That's the one thing that you do definitely need to blend. You might have something like a thick soup, maybe just always make sure it's got the protein in it. So like chicken and corn, or pea and ham, or vegetable with some lentils, pumpkin and lentil, minestrone, but just then blend it all up, okay, so that it's nice and smooth. Fish is an interesting one. Some surgeons don't mind if you have a little bit of fish without it being blended. I don't mind, generally speaking. We don't normally have a problem with this. A little bit of white fish, as long as it's soft and flaky and not too dry, and also if you add a little bit of sauce to it, it will usually break up in your mouth. So just take a little bit on your fork and then slowly sort of chew that really well before you swallow it. By a little bit on your fork, remember that we're talking about, you know, a quarter to maybe half a teaspoon. So it's smaller than your thumbnail. It's very, very small. Other types of fish that do work well are things like smoked salmon or tinned salmon or tuna in oil. Just make sure that you don't get the tinned salmon or tuna in spring water because it's a bit dry, it's a bit sticky, so it doesn't go down very well. But the ones in oil do go down, they're a little bit more slippery. Other things you can try for protein are things like beans and lentils and tofu. The silken tofu is better because it's nice and soft. And then veggies, however you like. So cook lots of veggies. You can steam them or boil them or roast them. Just make sure that they're cooked all the way through. There's nothing hard or lumpy in the middle, and they're easily sort of squashed with a fork. So things like, obviously like your pumpkin, sweet potato. Potato is a funny one. Sometimes it can get a little bit dry and a little bit sticky. So if you do a mix of potato and pumpkin and mash it all together, that seems to work a bit better. Or if you add a bit of milk to the mashed potato as well, so that it's a little bit, a bit more smooth. Other veggies that work really well are things like broccoli and cauliflower, because when you cook them, you need to kind of cook them so they're a bit dead, but when you cook them really well, they just fall apart. So they can still look like trees on your plate, but as soon as you start to chew them, they just really disintegrate into nothing. Only snack if you're hungry. Again, you know, a little spoon or two is probably going to be enough to get you through. So you can go back to options like a little bit of pureed fruit, or a yogurt, or a little bit of banana, or maybe a little bit of leftover from lunch or dinner the night before. Things like diet jelly, or even a cup of tea, a cup of hot chocolate is enough to get you through. And the benefit of having a drink or a diet jelly rather than having food for your snack is that it's going to contribute to your fluid intake for the day. And that's what, like I said in the beginning, people often struggle with. So getting a little bit of extra fluid in through your snacks is a really good way to go. All right, that's sort of the types of food. Does anybody have questions about the types of food at all? I've got a few people on. No, sorry, I know there's a lag with the Facebook Live, but we'll get there. It seems to be okay with you all, so that's great. The only other things I will say is there's a few extra little bits and pieces. Always make sure you're taking your multivitamin and your fiber supplement every day, and make sure you're, as I said before, sipping all day to try and keep your fluids up. If you're going to the loo, this might be a bit too much information, if you're going to the loo and your urine is dark or yellow, and not the fluoro yellow from the multivitamins, it's sort of like dark or cloudy, or like an orangey sort of colour, then you need to be drinking more, you're dehydrated. Often you won't feel thirsty, so it's really important to kind of be proactive with your fluids and just be sipping all day. And lastly, if you're feeling up to it, if you've got enough energy and your pain is all settled down, then start your walking, sort of get up, get active. Still don't do anything that's using your core too much, so not too much heavy lifting, or don't go back to the gym and do weights. Don't do the elliptical, but you could go into the gym and walk on the treadmill or sit on the recliner bike where you're sort of lying back a little bit. They often feel more comfortable than the stationary bike where you're sitting up. If you still have any wounds that aren't healed, any scabs left, then don't get in a swimming pool. But if all of your wounds are healed, you might like to get in a pool and just walk up and down the pool. I still wouldn't swim because that puts a lot of pressure on, it requires a lot of core work. But you could, get in there and sort of start walking up and down because it takes some weight off your joints. It makes things feel a lot easier when you're in the water. Alrighty, let me know. As always, I hope you found this helpful. You can find more advice from me on my blog, livingwithasleeve.com. I post all of my videos up there as well, so you'll be able to go back and see a little bit of an explanation of every stage of the process while you're there. I've got a whole bunch of resources. You can go on there and you can download some lunch ideas for after your surgery, and a few other bits and pieces, like our top tips for living with a sleeve. And I've also got a forum on there, question and answer forum, so that's your chance, I guess, to ask me any questions about the surgery that you have, and I'll get on and I'll answer them. And chances are, if you have questions about the surgery, somebody else will as well. So the more you can ask, the better, and you'll know that you're getting a good sort of professional opinion and advice, and I'll help you as best as I can. Okay, so feel free to either ask there or ask on the Facebook page, or just email me, zoe@zoewilsonnutrition.com, and feel free to email me anytime. Okay, lovely to see you all. Thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon. Cheers guys, bye.